I am Gabriel Hanot, 28 years old, living and working in Alabama. My life at that time, how should I put it? It was stable to the point of becoming bland. Every day repeated itself like an emotionless cycle. Waking up at 6 a.m., brewing a cup of black coffee so bitter that just smelling it would wake you up, then driving my old clunker to the office where I did administrative work for a small insurance company. The job wasn't bad, the pay was enough to live on, but it was so repetitive it drove me crazy. Mornings checking emails, afternoons in meetings, evenings back at my cramped one-bedroom apartment, eating fast food for dinner and scrolling through Netflix until late. No girlfriend, no close friends, nothing exciting. I felt like I was drifting in a calm river, but calm to the point of being soporific. Sometimes, lying in bed, I would ask myself, am I living or just existing? That day, an ordinary Wednesday morning like any other, I was sitting in front of my computer screen clacking away at soulless numbers for insurance contracts. Outside the window, the Alabama sky was gray and overcast, with a light drizzle making the office atmosphere even more stifling. Suddenly, an image of my grandfather Arthur flashed in my mind. He would be turning 80 this Christmas. Grandpa, the old man living alone in his weathered wooden house on the outskirts of the city. I remembered him telling old stories about his youthful days, the adventures he used to share with me when I was a child. The last time I visited him was several months ago, and I felt guilty for being too busy with work. What meaningful gift should I get him? I thought to myself, scrolling through a few ideas. A book about history, or an old-fashioned watch. He liked simple things, nothing flashy. Lost in thought, the phone on my desk vibrated. I glanced at the screen. It was Grandpa's number. My heart skipped a beat. He rarely called. Usually I was the one who reached out. I picked up immediately, trying to sound cheerful. Grandpa, it's Gabriel. How are you? His voice came through the other end, warm but a little hoarse, as if he were trying to steady it. Gabriel, my dear grandson. I'm fine, still getting around. How about you? Is the office job tiring? Are you eating properly? We bantered for a bit as usual. I told him about my boring days at the office, and he teased me. A young man's life should be full of adventure. Don't be like me, regretting it only when you're old. We asked about each other's health, the weather. Small talk that somehow made me feel warm inside. Then his tone shifted, becoming more serious. Gabriel, come home this weekend. I'm hosting a family gathering. It's important. I want everyone there. I was surprised. A family gathering? What's the occasion, Grandpa? He paused for a second, then replied, I just want to see everyone. Don't ask too many questions, just come. I'll be waiting. His voice was calm, but I could hear a trace of weariness seeping through, as if he were trying to hide something. I sensed this wasn't an ordinary get-together, not the usual cheerful Christmas or birthday gathering. He didn't explain the reason, and that made me anxious. Yes, I'll come, I promised, then hung up. For the rest of the workday, I couldn't concentrate. Why had he called so suddenly? And the whole family. That was rare because my family had never been particularly close. The weekend arrived faster than I expected. I drove to Grandpa's house along the familiar road lined with ancient oak trees on both sides. Alabama in this season was chilly, with a cool wind blowing through the car window carrying the scent of damp earth. When I pulled up to the gate, several other cars were already parked. My parents' car, Robert and Nancy's, then Aunt Patricia and Uncle Frank's, and even my cousins, Olivia, Ethan, and Lucas. I was genuinely surprised. My family rarely gathered like this. The last time was... when? Probably Olivia's wedding 3 years ago. I stepped inside. The smell of baked goods and coffee wafted from the kitchen. Everyone was already seated around the large dining table, chatting animatedly, at least on the surface. My dad, Robert, was laughing loudly with Uncle Frank about some sports game. My mom, Nancy, and Aunt Patricia were whispering about shopping. My cousins, beautiful Olivia with her golden blonde hair, quick-witted Ethan, and quiet Lucas, were scrolling on their phones. I greeted everyone. Hi, Mom and Dad. Hi, Aunt and Uncle. Hi, cousins. They responded, but I sensed the politeness was superficial. Then I saw Grandpa at the head of the table, looking thinner than last time, his hair snow-white, his eyes deep-set. I walked over and gave him a tight hug. "Grandpa, I've missed you so much." He patted my back and smiled softly. "My good grandson, it's good you came." The atmosphere started out seemingly cheerful. People asked about work, life, and cracked a few jokes. But I quickly noticed the awkwardness. The way they spoke to Grandpa, polite but distant. There was no real warmth, no genuine questions about his health or daily life. My mom asked, "How have you been feeling, Dad?" But it sounded like she was reading from a script. Aunt Patricia smiled, but her eyes didn't meet his. Dad and Uncle Frank talked about the weather, avoiding deeper topics. I sat there observing, and a sense of unease grew inside me. This family. We had never been truly close. From a young age, I'd noticed the tension between Grandpa and my parents, my aunt and uncle. They often argued about money, about lifestyles. Grandpa lived simply and frugally, while my parents liked spending and putting on an impressive front. Dinner began. Grandpa personally served the simple dishes: roasted meat, salad, bread. We sat around the table and he spoke slowly, his voice trembling with age. "Everyone. I'm old now. My strength is fading and time is running out." The table fell silent. I looked at him, my heart tightening. He continued, "I want to use all the savings I've accumulated over my lifetime to organize a luxurious trip for the whole family. Before I close my eyes forever, my only wish is to have one beautiful memory with my children and grandchildren while we're all still here together." His words were like a time bomb. At first, everyone exchanged glances, then their attitudes shifted dramatically. My dad's eyes lit up. "A luxurious trip? I already love the sound of that, Dad." My mom smiled brightly. "What do you think about Europe, Dad? Paris, for example?" Aunt Patricia excitedly chimed in. "Yes, 5-star hotels with spas, everything included." Uncle Frank nodded. "It would be so good for your health to relax like that, Dad." My cousins grew animated too. Olivia exclaimed, "I want to go to the Maldives, turquoise seas and white sand." Ethan jumped in. "Or Hawaii, we could surf." Even Lucas, who rarely spoke, added, "As long as the hotel has private pool, the more luxurious the better." The excitement was plain on everyone's faces, far outweighing any concern for Grandpa's health. No one asked if he was tired, if he needed to see a doctor, or how he was really feeling. They only discussed destinations and amenities as if this were a free vacation waiting to happen. I sat silently, watching it all. Something felt wrong. Up to now, the relationship between Grandpa and my parents' aunt and uncle had always been cold. They rarely visited him, only calling when they needed something. Especially in recent years, I had overheard vague mentions of his will, tense conversations about money, about how things would be divided later. Why had he invited everyone? Why spend all his savings on people who had never truly cared about him? I wondered to myself, my heart beating faster. Was this trip a chance to reconcile, or was he hiding something? I hoped everything would turn out well, but my doubts kept growing. Still, I didn't speak up. I didn't want to ruin the mood. Dinner ended and everyone left one by one. My parents said a quick goodbye to Grandpa. My aunt and uncle promised to meet for the trip. My cousins hugged him enthusiastically, but it felt fake to me. In the end, it was just Grandpa and me in the quiet house. The dim yellow light illuminated his face, making him look even more exhausted. I sat down beside him. "Grandpa, why do you want to go on this trip with everyone? They often give you headaches." He looked at me and smiled calmly. "You'll find out soon enough after the trip is over." That answer made me more nervous than ever. Curiosity mixed with worry surged like an approaching storm. What was he hiding? What would this trip bring? I hugged him once more before leaving, driving through the dark Alabama night with my mind swirling with 1,000 questions. I didn't know then that his invitation was the beginning of the biggest twist of my life. A few weeks flew by in the blink of an eye, and the trip that Grandpa had promised officially began. I received a detailed email from a luxury travel company. The destination was an extravagant resort in the Maldives, a place frequented only by the upper class and the wealthy. The Maldives, crystal clear turquoise seas, powdery white sand, overwater villas with private infinity pools and royal-like service. I had seen pictures online before, but I had never dreamed of setting foot there. Grandpa had said he would use all his life savings. But the Maldives? The cost must have been tens of thousands of dollars per person. I called him to ask more, but he just laughed. "Don't worry about me. I've arranged everything." That mystery only made me more uneasy, but I tried to push it aside, hoping the trip would bring everyone closer together. On the day of departure, we gathered at the international airport in Alabama. I arrived early, pulling a small suitcase with just a few simple outfits, and immediately felt the stark difference like a punch in the face. My parents, Robert and Nancy, showed up in elegant attire. Dad in a perfectly tailored suit, Mom in a glamorous long dress with a designer handbag, looking like they were heading to the Oscars rather than a long flight. Aunt Patricia and Uncle Frank were no less impressive. Aunt Patricia wore sparkling high heels as if she'd stepped straight off the red carpet, while Uncle Frank sported expensive sunglasses and pulled along several suitcases, as though they were moving there permanently instead of just vacationing for a few days. My cousins, Olivia, Ethan, and Lucas, were buzzing with excitement. Olivia with elaborate makeup, Ethan in a sporty polo shirt, Lucas holding a professional camera. They chatted animatedly, their laughter echoing. The Maldives has turquoise seas and free cocktails. I heard the resort has 24/7 spa, gotta try everything before we leave. Their enthusiasm was like kids in front of a candy store, as if they were stepping into a dream vacation they deserved. Then Grandpa Arthur appeared, and my heart tightened. He wore his familiar simple clothes, an old cotton shirt, baggy khaki pants, worn-out sneakers. His luggage was just one compact, unmarked suitcase, and he walked slowly due to his age, lightly leaning on a cane for balance. He looked completely out of place amid the surrounding glamour, among the upscale travelers with Louis Vuitton suitcases and expensive perfume. I rushed over to help him. "Grandpa, let me carry that for you." "Are you tired?" He smiled weakly. "I'm fine, grandson. I'm used to it." But I could clearly see the loneliness in his eyes, like a stranger who had wandered into a party not meant for him. During check-in, I was even more surprised. Business class tickets, a private VIP lounge with plush leather seats, gourmet snacks, and priority service. Everything went smoothly without a single hitch. The airport staff bowed respectfully to Grandpa in an unusually deferential way, as if he were a longtime VIP. I thought to myself, Grandpa lives so simply. How could his savings cover this? Did he borrow from friends? The suspicion rose again, making me anxious. Was he hiding something about his finances? But he just sat quietly, sipping water, observing everyone. The flight was long, but business class made it comfortable. We landed in the Maldives in the afternoon with golden sunlight gleaming on the sparkling ocean. Private transfers, sleek black limousines took us to the resort. When we arrived, the whole family was overwhelmed by the indescribable luxury. The resort was a true paradise. Private overwater villas, each with an infinity pool overlooking the sea, 24/7 staff with professional smiles. The air carried the scent of tropical flowers, the gentle sound of waves lapping, and amenities like hydrotherapy spas, Michelin-starred restaurants, even a private yacht. Olivia squealed, "Oh my God, it's like a dream. I have to take photos for Instagram right now." Ethan clapped, "Private pools too. Party tonight." Their excitement quickly overtook everything, including any concern for Grandpa. No one asked if he was tired after the flight or how he wanted to rest. They rushed off to explore as if he were just an invisible sponsor. From the very first day, family members started splitting into their own activity groups without a word to Grandpa. My dad and Uncle Frank went deep-sea fishing, a pricey service with a private guide. Mom and Aunt Patricia booked spa appointments immediately. Hot stone massages, gold facials, all the lavish treatments. Olivia dragged Ethan and Lucas to the resort's boutique for VIP discounted designer shopping. "Grandpa, what do you want to do today?" I asked him, trying to include him. He shook his head. "I'll just rest here, grandson." And so Grandpa Arthur often sat alone in the grand lobby or the tropical garden, quietly watching his children and grandchildren come and go. They waved at him from afar, but no one proactively sat beside him or chatted for long. I saw him holding an old book, his eyes gazing distantly at the sea, and my heart ached. He looked strangely lonely in this paradise. I tried to spend as much time as possible with him, sitting and talking about old memories, asking about his childhood in Alabama. "Tell me about your first fishing trip, Grandpa," I prompted, hoping to draw him out of the silence that had enveloped him since the trip began. He smiled faintly. His aged eyes squinted as if searching for a distant memory. I waited, hoping he would open up, tell me something beautiful or sad. But he just gazed at the far sea, his eyes deep and thoughtful, as if he wanted to speak but then held back. That moment weighed heavily on my heart, as if something was slowly slipping out of reach. I was about to ask more when Olivia burst in like a whirlwind, grabbing my arm. "Gabriel, come snorkeling with me. It's so fun." Before I could react, Ethan threw an arm around my shoulder excitedly. "Golf, bro? This resort has an amazing private course." I reluctantly went along with their invitations, not because I wanted to, but because I was swept up in the group's energy. But my mind stayed with Grandpa, and when I returned, he was still sitting there alone, quietly, as if no one had ever come to his side. During the first meals at the resort, the differences became even clearer. The main restaurant was a masterpiece: precious wood tables, elaborate menus with French, Italian, and fresh seafood dishes. Grandpa seemed awkward with it all. He held the menu, frowning at unfamiliar names like foie gras or beluga caviar, asking the waiter how to eat them with a hesitant voice. Meanwhile, everyone else ordered expensive items casually, almost assuming someone else is paying. Dad ordered a $1,000 red wine. "Waiter, bring a bottle to the table." Mom chose grilled lobster. "We have to try this. It's supposed to be the best in the Maldives." Aunt Patricia and Uncle Frank added premium sushi. Olivia went straight for the extravagant desserts. They laughed, photographed their food, living in their own paradise. Grandpa only ordered simple things: grilled fish and salad, eating slowly, and I saw him struggle with the formal service: silver cutlery, intricately folded napkins. I noticed seemingly casual comments starting to appear like cracks on a calm lake surface. The first time was when Grandpa asked the waiter about a dish. "What is this, son?" Olivia giggled. "Grandpa's so old-fashioned. This is something everyone knows." Ethan chimed in. "Let me explain it to you, Grandpa. It's simple." But their tone was condescending. The eye rolls when he asked basic things like how to use the room remote, the irritation when he walked slowly or repeated questions. "Hurry up, Grandpa, or we'll be late for dinner," Uncle Frank muttered once. I heard it all, and anger rose in me, but I stayed silent, observing. Notably, no one showed concern about the trip's cost. On the contrary, many subtly competed to maximize the expensive services, as if afraid to miss a rare opportunity. Dad booked an extra yacht trip. "It's free. Why not?" Aunt Patricia called for a private in-room masseuse. "Gotta relax to the max." They spent lavishly, ordering drinks, booking tours, without asking Grandpa if he approved. I started wondering, do they truly care about him? Or are they just taking advantage because this trip is free? Gradually, I clearly sensed an uncomfortable truth. For most of the family, this trip wasn't about being with Grandpa. It was about enjoying a free luxury vacation. They laughed, took photos, posted stories on social media with #FamilyVacation, but Grandpa was just background. I saw it in the small gestures, how they avoided sitting near him at meals, how they changed the subject when he told old stories. My heart grew heavy, anxiously awaiting something to explode. Grandpa Arthur noticed everything, I was sure of it, but he didn't react. He remained calm, sometimes smiling when someone greeted him, sometimes silent for long periods, as if observing and memorizing every detail. Once, as I sat with him in the garden, he looked out at the sea. "Do you see everyone having fun, grandson?" I nodded. "Yes, but what about you, Grandpa?" He smiled. I'm fine. At my age, just seeing the grandchildren laugh and talk is enough. But you know, sometimes people are happy for different reasons. Some are happy because they're together. Others are happy because they think they're getting something. His eyes were profound, as if holding a plan. I began to understand that Grandpa's isolation wasn't accidental. It was gradually being revealed, and this trip might not be as peaceful as it appeared. With each passing day, the underlying tension grew like a ticking time bomb. Lying in bed in the villa, listening to the waves, I wondered, what will happen next? What is Grandpa waiting for? That suspense kept me awake, and I knew this paradise was about to reveal its dark side. Few days later, when the trip had passed the halfway mark, our extended family decided to have dinner at a luxurious restaurant in a high-end hotel near the resort, a place frequented only by the elite and VIP guests. The restaurant was called La Perle, famous for its view of the sparkling night sea, crystal and gold glinting interiors, and a menu so expensive that just looking at it could make you dizzy. The idea came from my mom and Aunt Patricia, who had been excitedly discussing it all afternoon. We have to try this restaurant. It's Michelin-starred, after all. My dad and Uncle Frank nodded in agreement, as if this were a chance for them to prove their status. My cousins were thrilled, taking photos before leaving and posting stories with captions like, "We're having a proper fine dining experience tonight." And Grandpa? No one asked if he wanted to go. I asked him privately, "Grandpa, are you tired? We can just eat at the resort." He just shook his head. "I'll go with everyone, grandson. I'm fine." But his voice sounded weary, and I could sense his reluctance. We arrived at the restaurant at sunset, as the sun dipped red-hot below the ocean horizon. The initial atmosphere was overtly performative, like a carefully staged play. Everyone was dressed to the nines. Dad in a shiny black suit, Mom in a glamorous long gown with a sparkling diamond necklace, Aunt Patricia and Uncle Frank equally decked out in designer clothes. Olivia, Ethan, and Lucas looked like young celebrities stepping out of a magazine photo shoot. Olivia wore a tight, short dress that accentuated her curves, deliberately drawing attention. Ethan had on a white shirt with a few buttons casually undone, his hair slicked back perfectly. Lucas wore a tailored suit impeccably pressed down to every stitch. They chatted animatedly, their tones polished, sprinkling in words like refined, exquisite, high class, as if to prove to the world that they were born to belong in such a luxurious setting. "Waiter, a 2000 Bordeaux Red, please," Dad called out loudly, and the table erupted in laughter. I wore simple clothes, feeling out of place, but I forced a smile. Then Grandpa Arthur appeared, and the atmosphere shifted instantly. He wore his familiar plain outfit, an old cotton shirt, baggy khakis, worn shoes, walking slowly, lightly leaning on his cane. He looked like an ordinary man who had wandered into a palace, completely mismatched with the glamorous surroundings. I saw my parents and aunt and uncle visibly uncomfortable. Mom frowned and whispered to Aunt Patricia, "Dad dressed like that to come here. So embarrassing." Dad shot him a sharp glance. Uncle Frank shook his head. Grandpa sat down next to me, smiling weakly. "It's beautiful, isn't it, grandson? I never thought I'd sit in a place like this one day." I nodded, trying to hide the rising unease. My heart pounded, sensing that tonight would not go smoothly. Dinner began with expensive wine poured into sparkling crystal glasses. Everyone ate and drank merrily, ordering fresh seafood, foie gras, and elaborate French dishes. Laughter echoed as they shared stories of past vacations and boasted about wealthy friends. I sat there, trying to join in, but my eyes kept drifting to Grandpa. He ate slowly, awkward with the cutlery, and didn't order anything extravagant. Suddenly, amid the laughter, Grandpa Arthur stood up to go to the restroom. Moving slowly, he accidentally bumped into a decorative table in the center of the dining room, a small table with a vase and delicately arranged crystal glasses. A stack of glasses fell, shattering with a piercing crash. This drew the attention of the entire restaurant. The room fell silent for a second, then disdainful glances and malicious whispers turned toward Grandpa. "What's that old man doing? He looks like a beggar who wandered in here." I heard it clearly and my heart tightened. The maitre d' and waiters rushed over instantly, their voices harsh. "What have you done? You clumsy old man dressed like a bum. You must compensate the restaurant for the damage right now," they yelled, pointing at the shards, demanding he pay for the expensive decorative glasses, surely several $100s. Not a single family member stood up to defend him. No one spoke up, no one approached, no one offered a helping hand. Instead of showing concern, they all looked down in unison, embarrassment and shame plain on their faces. Their cheeks flushed red, not out of sympathy for him, but out of fear that others would witness this scene, one they saw as humiliating. Mom and Aunt Patricia began blaming Grandpa Arthur in whispers sharp enough for me to hear. "Dad has embarrassed the whole family in this upscale place. Why couldn't he be more careful? We're here to relax." Their tone was full of contempt, as if he were a burden. Dad and Uncle Frank, unable to hold back, directly scolded him in front of everyone. "You should know your place, Dad. Stop causing trouble," Dad shouted, his face red with anger. Uncle Frank added, "Walking so slowly, bumping into everything, making us ashamed." My cousins, Olivia, Ethan, and Lucas, were even worse. They avoided eye contact, deliberately turning to other tables, pretending not to know him. Olivia hid her face behind the menu. Ethan scrolled on his phone. Lucas stared out the window, afraid others would recognize their connection to Grandpa Arthur. I sat there, feeling the humiliation reach its peak, not just for Grandpa, but for the very concept of family. My heart pounded wildly, blood rushing to my head, suspense building to the point of explosion. Is this family? Blood relatives treating him like a stranger? Faced with the barrage of scolding from the staff and family, Grandpa Arthur turned to us, his voice trembling but still trying to stay calm. "Why? I'm the one who paid for this entire trip, yet I'm being treated like a nuisance?" His words exploded like a bomb in the restaurant, silencing everyone. I saw his eyes redden, but he didn't cry. Robert, my dad, coldly pulled out his wallet without a moment's hesitation. He took out a $100 bill, held it up for the whole table to see, then threw it straight at Grandpa Arthur's face in front of the entire restaurant. The bill fluttered through the air, falling cruelly to the floor. Robert's voice rang out loudly, cold and full of contempt. "This is all the money you have left for this trip, Dad. Take it and get out of here. You look like a freeloader." The sound echoed throughout the room. The surrounding diners all turned, mouths agape. Whispers rose louder than the elegant background music. Grandpa Arthur bent down, slowly, carefully, almost painfully, to pick up the bill from the floor. He didn't react, didn't argue, didn't defend himself. He just stood there silently, his silver hair bowed, shoulders slightly trembling, looking as if he had aged 10 years in an instant. That moment crushed my chest. Tears welled up, stinging my eyes. The image of the grandfather who had raised me with kindness and patience, now humiliated in front of me, was something I would never forget. I couldn't take it anymore. My chair scraped loudly as I stood up, startling a few people. For the first time in my life, I openly opposed my parents and aunt and uncle. My voice shook with emotion but was filled with pent-up anger. "How could you do that, Dad? Grandpa is the one who paid for everything on this trip, yet you treat him like trash in front of all these people. This is ingratitude. It's cruelty." Everything stopped. The clinking of cutlery ceased. Curious diners turned their heads. My family's reaction was immediately rigid and cold. Mom crossed her arms, lips curling. He dares to stand up against his own father in public. How shameful. Aunt Patricia leaned toward Uncle Frank, her voice sharp as a knife. Gabriel really doesn't know his place. No wonder this family never gets ahead. Uncle Frank nodded and chimed in loudly on purpose. Exactly. He needs to be taught a lesson or he'll walk all over the family. Robert, my dad, whipped around to face me, face flushed. What did you just say? You dare defy me here. Do you want to cause more chaos? Before I could respond, he swung his arm hard, a slap that rang out through the upscale restaurant. My cheek burned, my ears rang, my vision blurred for a moment. Nancy covered her mouth in feigned shock, but her eyes gleamed with satisfaction. Aunt Patricia smiled faintly, looking pleased as if this were entertaining. Uncle Frank slammed his hand on the table. "That's right. That's how you handle him." And my cousins? They immediately turned the scene into sick entertainment. Olivia raised her phone to record video, excited. "Oh my God, this will blow up on my story." Ethan adjusted the angle, laughing. "Get closer, show his face clearly." Lucas was already on Instagram. What caption? "Fine dining, but drama explodes"? I stood there, cheek stinging, heart racing, but I tried to stay calm. Robert gestured toward the door, his voice sharp as a command. "Get out! Both you and your grandfather leave this restaurant right now. Don't embarrass us any further." Uncle Frank stood up to echo. "Go! You're just making people think this family is carrying dead weight." I turned to Grandpa. Grandpa Arthur stood silently, shoulders slightly trembling. The golden light shone on his aged face, revealing the heartbreak he was trying to hide. I walked over and took his hand. "Grandpa, let's go. I don't want to stay here another minute." His hand trembled but gripped mine tightly. He whispered, voice soft but full of meaning. "It's okay, grandson. Let's go. Everything will become clear soon." We walked through the murmuring stairs of the diners, past the phones secretly recording, past the giggles behind us. As the restaurant door opened, the cold sea breeze rushed in, stinging my burning cheek. I hugged him close, voice choking. "Grandpa, I'm sorry for letting you go through this." He gently patted my back and whispered, "It's not your fault. Tonight is only the beginning." And in that moment, I knew for certain the dark side of this family had revealed itself, and the real twist was only a few steps away. We left the restaurant in heavy silence, the distant sound of waves lapping like mocking whispers. I supported Grandpa Arthur as we walked slowly along the polished stone path leading back to the hotel, his hand gripping my arm tightly for balance. The Maldives sea breeze tonight was colder than usual, carrying the salty tang of the ocean, and I felt it slapping my face. Not the physical pain from my father's slap, but the deeper ache from the betrayal by my own flesh and blood. Grandpa walked beside me, his aged figure silent without a single complaint, only the soft tap of his cane against the ground. I glanced at him, searching for signs of hurt, but his face was strangely calm, as if everything that had just happened was merely a passing dream. As for me, I was still reeling, my mind spinning with the image of the $100 bill falling to the floor, the smug laughter from my mother and aunt, the phones recording like they were capturing some sick joke. How could they do that? To Grandpa, the man who raised them? I thought to myself, tears nearly spilling out, but I swallowed them back, not wanting him to see me weak. We didn't go straight to our rooms. Instead, we sat in the lobby area, lit with dim golden lights, luxurious with soft leather sofas and fresh flower arrangements, yet so cold it sent shivers down my spine. The atmosphere was quiet, broken only by faint background music from hidden speakers and the murmurs of a few late guests. I sat beside him, still holding his hand tightly, trying to calm down. My cheek still burned, but the greater pain was the shattering inside my heart. "Grandpa, let's go back to the room and rest." "I don't want to see them anymore," I said softly. He shook his head. "Not yet, grandson. Sit here a little longer." His voice was unusually calm, as if everything had been anticipated long ago. I looked at him, curiosity mixed with worry. What was he thinking? Why wasn't he angry or crying like I wanted to? That composure made me anxious, like waiting for a time bomb to go off. Suddenly, Grandpa Arthur stood up, leaning on his cane as he walked to the reception desk. I sat there watching, my heart beating faster. He spoke to the receptionist, a young man in a neat uniform, his voice low but clear. I couldn't hear exactly, but I saw the staff member nodding vigorously before dialing a number. Just minutes later, the hotel manager hurried out from behind the counter, face flushed from rushing. He bowed deeply to Grandpa Arthur, almost at a 90-degree angle. "Sir Hannot, it is an honor to serve you. How may I assist?" Grandpa spoke with the manager for a while, his low voice mentioning words like luggage and immediately. The manager nodded and turned to give orders to the staff. Grandpa Arthur returned to sit beside me, his face as calm as if nothing had happened. I couldn't hold back my curiosity and asked, voice trembling, "Grandpa, what did you just say to them? What's going on?" He looked at me and smiled faintly. "Just sit and wait, grandson. The answer will come very soon." His words were like a mysterious promise, making me so nervous that my hands and feet went cold. Wait for what? What answer? I glanced around the lobby, feeling the air grow thicker, like a storm was about to hit. Time dragged slowly as I sat there, my mind racing. What is he doing? Is he calling someone for help? Or is he going to kick them out? The thought flashed through my mind, but I dismissed it as too crazy. Grandpa, the man who lived simply and frugally, how could he? About 15 minutes later, hotel staff began bringing luggage down to the lobby. At first, just a few familiar suitcases, their wheels clacking on the marble floor. Then more and more lined up in rows right in front of the reception desk like a barrier. I stared, heart pounding. Those suitcases, they belonged to my parents, my aunt and uncle, my cousins. Dad Robert's shiny black suitcase, Mom's designer handbag, Ethan's sporty backpack, all of them brought down, neatly arranged but menacing. I was stunned, mouth agape. "What's this, Grandpa? Why is everyone's luggage—" I turned to him in confusion, eyes wide. But Grandpa Arthur remained silent, only nodding slightly, his gaze fixed on the main entrance. That silence made me more anxious than ever, like sitting in an electric chair waiting for the switch. About 30 minutes later, the rest of the family returned from the restaurant. Their laughter and chatter echoed from afar, boasting about the meal, the wine, but it died abruptly as they entered the lobby and saw their own luggage scattered across the floor. The air froze. Dad stopped dead in his tracks, face paling. "What the hell is this?" Mom covered her mouth. "Our luggage? Who dared?" Aunt Patricia and Uncle Frank exchanged panicked looks. Olivia, Ethan, and Lucas stood behind, faces blank in disbelief. Robert, Nancy, Patricia, and Frank immediately stormed to the reception desk, demanding loudly, "Who did this? Why has our luggage been brought down? Explain right now." The receptionist stayed calm and called the manager. The hotel manager stood beside him, polite but firm. "Ladies and gentlemen, at the request of the hotel owner, your family is required to leave the premises tonight. All accommodation and service charges will be fully refunded. We regret any inconvenience." The group fell silent for a second, then erupted. "The owner? Who is the owner? Where is your boss? We demand to see him now." Dad shouted, face turning red. The manager gently tilted his head toward the nearby sofa, where Grandpa Arthur and I were sitting, and said calmly, "You may speak directly with our owner." The entire family went deathly still. Looks of shock, doubt, then horror appeared on their faces one by one. Mom whipped around, mouth hanging open. Aunt Patricia took a step back. Dad and Uncle Frank stood frozen as if struck by lightning. Olivia covered her mouth, Ethan shook his head, Lucas stared. The lobby air thickened, broken only by the soft music and my pounding heart. They looked at Grandpa, the man they had just humiliated, like he was a ghost. Robert and Frank strode quickly toward Grandpa Arthur, firing questions. "What game are you playing now, Dad? Is this a joke?" Their voices were full of anger and confusion. The hotel manager followed, bowing deeply and solemnly to Grandpa Arthur. "Sir, everything is ready." The manager announced clearly to the entire lobby, "Mr. Arthur Hannot is the current owner of this hotel. He purchased it 5 years ago. He is also the majority shareholder in the corporation that owns this chain of luxury hotels and resorts across the United States." The truth exploded like thunder. My family was utterly stunned. Those who had just insulted him were now speechless, faces ashen, stammering. Mom collapsed into a chair. Aunt Patricia trembled. "It can't be." Dad shook his head. "How could you? How could Dad afford to buy this hotel?" My cousin stood rooted to the spot, eyes wide in terror. I stood frozen, realizing for the first time that Grandpa was never poor or powerless, and all his earlier patience had been a choice, not helplessness. My heart raced with a mix of suspense and amazement. Grandpa, the man living simply in an old wooden house, was the owner of an empire. All those years he had hidden it to test us. I looked at him, tears streaming down from pride and pain. Robert and Frank began bombarding Grandpa with questions. Why did you hide it from us? Where did the money come from? Why tell us only now? But Grandpa Arthur remained calm. I am asking you to leave just as you asked me to leave the restaurant an hour ago. His voice was cold, uncompromising. Robert and Frank protested, causing a scene. No way, we're family. They shouted and banged on the counter. The hotel manager immediately called security, burly men in uniforms, who escorted them out. Nancy, Aunt Patricia, and my cousins stood dazed, shocked, silently gathering their luggage and leaving under the watchful eyes of the lobby. They walked out the door, disappearing into the night, leaving behind a heavy silence. After the family left the hotel in chaos, the lobby gradually returned to quiet. The staff quickly cleared away the remaining suitcases, wiped the gleaming marble floor, and the dim golden lights softened, creating an eerily serene atmosphere. The faint background music from hidden speakers resumed as if nothing had ever happened. Only Grandpa Arthur and I remained, sitting across from each other on the soft leather sofa in the vast space, now occupied only by a few late guests whispering in a distant corner. The sea breeze blew in from the entrance, carrying the sharp, salty scent, and I felt a chill, not just from the air, but from deep within my heart. Everything had unfolded too quickly, from the slap at the restaurant to this twist, leaving me sitting there, mind reeling, heart pounding like a drum. I still hadn't fully recovered from the shock. I looked at Grandpa, the man who had been humiliated just a short while ago, now treated with absolute reverence by the manager and staff, and didn't know what to ask first. His face remained calm, his thinning silver hair glowing faintly under the lights, his deep eyes holding an ocean of secrets. Just an hour earlier, he had money thrown in his face and been called a freeloader. Now he was the owner of this hotel, the majority shareholder of a massive corporation. I felt like I was living in a mad dream, or worse, a nightmare turned upside down. My hands trembled as I gripped the armrest, trying to organize my thoughts. Grandpa is this wealthy? Why did he hide it from everyone? And why did he let them treat him like that? Doubt, astonishment, and a touch of fear surged, making it hard to breathe. Were there more secrets? Would he be angry at me for being part of that family? Grandpa Arthur broke the silence first, his voice warm yet firm, as if he had been waiting for this moment for a long time. Gabriel, if you have any questions for me, just ask. I'll answer everything. I'm not hiding anything anymore. His words were an invitation, and I sensed the sincerity in them. He sat up straighter, looking directly at me without evasion. The air between us suddenly grew closer in the expansive hotel lobby, as if only the two of us existed in the world. I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself, and finally asked what had been weighing on me since the truth exploded. Grandpa, why, being so wealthy, did you choose to live in poverty? I've seen you in that old wooden house, eating simply. Why let everyone think you were poor? And why did you allow the family to treat you like that for so many years? I don't understand. My voice trembled, tears nearly spilling. I thought of those years. He lived alone, rarely spending, while my parents and aunt and uncle complained about the stingy old man. Why didn't he say anything? Why endure it? Grandpa Arthur sighed softly and smiled sadly. Then he began to speak, his voice slow as if turning the pages of an old book. My dear grandson, I wasn't born rich. In my younger years working at the steel mill, I labored 14 hours a day, saving every penny to build capital for investments. I quietly invested in stocks, real estate, and gradually built this hotel corporation. 5 years ago, buying this Maldives hotel was just part of the investment chain. Not to show off, but because I always wanted to do things smartly and sustainably. He paused, gazing out the window at the night sea glittering under the moonlight. His voice deepened. I chose a simple life, far from ostentation, because I believe money isn't everything. I wanted to live as an ordinary person, not letting wealth make me forget who I really am. I sat silently listening, heart racing with anticipation. This was the first time he had shared details of his past, and each word felt like a secret door opening before me. He continued, voice even lower. I admit I deliberately let the family believe I was poor. Not out of fear, but because I wanted to know what they truly saw me as when money wasn't obviously involved. I wanted to test their hearts, see if they loved me as a father, as a grandfather, or only for the inheritance. His words struck my heart like a blow. I thought of the times my parents mentioned the will, how their concern for him was really calculation. He had known everything. He had set this trap long ago. He explained that over the years, Robert, Nancy, Patricia, and Frank frequently brought up the will, offering to manage his money, using the pretext of caring for his old age to control expenses. They called, visited, but always asked about assets. Dad, let me manage the money for you in case you get too old and weak. Or, how's the will coming, Dad? Let me handle it. But I knew it wasn't genuine concern. His voice was sorrowful, and I felt the pain he had hidden for years. My heart tightened, anxiously waiting for more. Was there evidence? Then he showed me copies of bank statements, power of attorney documents, and notes he had kept over the years. He pulled them from his jacket pocket, old but clear papers. I took them, eyes widening in shock. Bank statements showing regular withdrawals from his accounts for things he never spent on. Designer shopping, trips, even separate investments by my parents and aunt and uncle. Forged power of attorney papers, his handwritten notes recording conversations. This is the evidence, grandson. They gradually withdrew money under the guise of care, he said, voice calm but full of pain. I was stunned to realize their concern for him was systematic exploitation. My heart raced, blood rushing to my head. How could they do that? To you, their own father? I stammered, tears flowing. Suspense mixed with anger surged. This family I loved was so greedy. I thought of their smiles toward him, but now everything was clear, fake, calculating. Grandpa Arthur spoke clearly, voice resolute. This trip wasn't a gift, Gabriel. It was the final test. If they still saw me as a father, as family, I was ready to let the past go and forgive everything. But what happened at the restaurant gave me the clearest answer. They chose money, chose pride, over me. His words exploded in my mind like a bomb. The trip, all planned? He had foreseen everything? That suspense made me restless. How brilliant was he? I asked why he hadn't stopped it sooner, why he hadn't protected himself from the exploitation. Grandpa, why didn't you speak up? Why let them do that for years? He answered, eyes full of affection. I wanted you to see it all for yourself, Gabriel. Not through stories or legal files, but with your own eyes. You needed to see to understand people's hearts. And you're the only one in the family who never asked me about money or the will. You only asked if I was healthy, if I needed anything. You were the genuine one. His words choked me up, tears streaming down. I hugged him tightly, feeling his warmth, the man who had chosen me amid the betrayal. That night I understood for the first time that Grandpa wasn't just testing the family. He was also choosing an heir to his values, not just his wealth. He was giving me a lesson about human nature, about simplicity, about living without letting money dominate. I sat with him late into the night, listening to more of his past, and the suspense gradually gave way to peace. But I knew the story wasn't over. What was coming would change everything. The next morning, as the Maldives sun just peeked over the horizon, casting golden rays through the villa windows, Grandpa Arthur and I left the hotel. The manager saw us off at the door, bowing respectfully as if farewelling a king, and a private limousine was waiting to take us to the airport. I was still exhausted from the sleepless night, my mind swirling with everything he had told me about his years of hard work, the family's exploitation, the final test. Grandpa wore his simple clothes again with light luggage, but now I saw him differently. No longer a frail old man, but a wise, powerful figure. We boarded a business-class flight back to Alabama in silence. I glanced at him, hoping he would say something, but he just gazed out the window, his eyes distant. Throughout the journey home, Grandpa Arthur said almost nothing, only occasionally smiling when I checked on him. I could clearly sense that he had made his decision long ago. The trip was merely the final confirmation, like the last move on a chessboard. My heart beat faster, anxiously wondering what awaited us at home. What would he do with them after this trip? The thought made me restless, staring out the plane window at the drifting white clouds as if my life was about to change. When the plane landed in Alabama, it was already late afternoon, with pale golden sunlight shining on the familiar roads. We rented a car and drove to his old house in the suburbs, the small wooden home with a sagging porch worn by time where he had lived quietly for so many years. The road home was covered in falling yellow leaves, a cool autumn wind blowing through the car window, carrying the familiar scent of damp earth. I drove with Grandpa beside me, and the atmosphere in the car was heavy. I tried to make conversation. "Grandpa, are you tired? Shall I get you some coffee?" He just nodded. "That would be nice, thank you, grandson." But his eyes were deep, as if pondering something profound. I felt the suspense rising. What was about to happen in this old house full of my childhood memories? Would the family be waiting there? Or had they vanished after last night's shock? As the car pulled up to the gate, tires crunching on the gravel, I froze. The entire extended family was already inside. Robert, Nancy, Patricia, Frank, along with Olivia, Ethan, and Lucas, waiting as if nothing had happened. Through the window, I saw them seated around the old dining table, the dim yellow light illuminating their faces. My heart pounded, suspense mixed with anger. What are they here for? To apologize to Grandpa or to keep up the act? I thought to myself, gripping the steering wheel tightly. Grandpa looked at me and smiled faintly. "Let's go in, grandson." We entered the house, the smell of old coffee and aged wood filling the air, and the atmosphere was completely different from the night before at the hotel. No more raised voices, no more contempt, instead an unusual anxiety, softness, and caution. They sat there, faces pale, eyes looking at Grandpa with feigned respect. My dad sat at the head of the table, holding a coffee cup but not drinking. My mom was the first to stand, approaching to ask about his health, her voice full of concern, like a dutiful daughter finally realizing her mistakes. "Dad, are you tired? Let me make you some warm tea. Last night, I was so worried about you." Her tone was sweet, eyes glistening as if about to cry, but I saw the falseness clearly. Just the night before, she had smirked smugly when Dad slapped me. Aunt Patricia quickly chimed in, standing up too, her voice gentle. "That's right, Dad. It was all just a misunderstanding. Everyone was too stressed from the trip, tired from the long flight, so those words weren't meant for you. No one intended to hurt you." She looked at him with pleading eyes, hands clasped as if praying. I sat there observing, heart racing with suspense. What game were they playing? Would Grandpa believe them? Robert and Frank took turns speaking, deftly avoiding responsibility. My dad cleared his throat, voice low. "Dad, I think the same. Last night I had too much to drink and lost control. It was all a misunderstanding. Don't hold it against us." Uncle Frank nodded. "Exactly, Dad. The situation was chaotic. Everyone was exhausted. We were worried about you. It wasn't intentional." They blamed the alcohol, the circumstances, the misunderstanding, repeating it like an old song. But there was absolutely no direct apology for the humiliating behavior. Not a single "I'm sorry for throwing money in your face" or "I was wrong." Just evasions and deflections. I watched them, anger rising, but I stayed silent, waiting for Grandpa's response. My cousins, Olivia, Ethan, and Lucas, remained quiet, their eyes a mix of fear and calculation, as if weighing which side would benefit them more. Olivia sat with her head down, scrolling on her phone but glancing at Grandpa. Ethan fidgeted. Lucas stared out the window. They said nothing, but I could see the scheming. Now that Grandpa was revealed to be wealthy, should they reconcile? The atmosphere grew increasingly stifling, and I realized their concern now wasn't for him, but for the exposed power and wealth. They weren't worried about his health, but about losing their share of the inheritance. My heart tightened, anxiously thinking, what will Grandpa do next? Grandpa Arthur listened to everything in silence, without interrupting or reacting, letting each person reveal their true mask. He sat there, aged but dignified, eyes calmly scanning each one. I sat beside him, so nervous my hands and feet went cold. What was he waiting for? Would he soften? When they finally stopped, silence enveloped the room, and Grandpa Arthur spoke slowly. I've heard enough. His voice was calm but sharp as a knife. What happened that night wasn't a misunderstanding, it was your choice. You chose pride, you chose money over me. I don't need this belated concern nor apologies spoken out of fear of loss. His words exploded like a bomb in the room, silencing everyone. I looked at him, pride surging. He wasn't forgiving, and I knew he was right. He declared clearly, I will not forgive you, and I will no longer maintain any relationship based on money. From now on, you take care of yourselves. His voice was resolute, unwavering. The entire room fell into heavy silence, as if all the oxygen had been sucked out. A few began to shift their attitude from pleading to bitterness. Dad frowned, Mom bit her lip, Aunt Patricia looked away, but they didn't dare speak, only exchanging panicked glances. I sat there, heart pounding with suspense. How would they react? Explode? Or beg more? At that moment, the sound of engines roared outside the gate, rumbling like thunder. A convoy of sleek black SUVs pulled up one by one in front of the house, creating a scene utterly alien to this simple home. Luxurious vehicles gleaming in the afternoon sun as if from another world. Everyone looked out the window in astonishment. Grandpa Arthur stood up, turned to me, and said briefly, Gabriel, come with me. His voice was calm but commanding. I stood and followed him, clearly feeling the family's eyes fixed on us. Admiration from Olivia, envy from Ethan, bitterness from Dad Robert, and belated regret from Mom. They watched us like strangers. The grandfather they had once despised was now the master, and I was the one chosen. The two of us stepped outside, leaving behind the house full of people who had thought Grandpa Arthur had nothing, and now realized they had lost everything. The door closed behind us, and I followed him to the first SUV, heart racing with suspense, not knowing our destination. The suburban wind blew through, carrying the scent of decaying leaves, and I knew the family's masks had all fallen. The story continues. The convoy of sleek black SUVs started their engines, the rumbling sound shattering the quiet of the Alabama suburbs. I sat next to Grandpa on the plush leather seat, the tinted windows shielding us from the curious glances of the rare neighbors. The lead vehicle pulled away, followed by the other two, forming a solemn procession like something out of an action movie. We left the old wooden house behind, heading toward the city center, the road gradually shifting from ancient oak-lined streets to towering buildings glistening in the afternoon sun. I silently observed the changing scenery, from the familiar scent of damp earth to the urban smell of concrete and exhaust. My heart beat faster, suspense mixed with anxiety. "Grandpa, where are we going?" I asked softly, my voice trembling. He just smiled. "We're almost there, grandson. I want you to witness everything." His words were like a mysterious promise, making me feel as though I was stepping into a completely different world, one of power, of monumental decisions I had never imagined. The wind whistled through the slightly open window, carrying a chill, and I wondered, what is his true legacy, and what role will I play in it? The vehicle stopped in front of a discreet yet luxurious office building tucked away in the heart of the city. No flashy signs, no dazzling lights, just the order and quiet of a place where decisions are made, with a black glass facade and a few security personnel standing guard. This wasn't the noisy kind of office I was used to at my insurance company. It exuded secrecy like a modern fortress. I stepped out of the car, my legs slightly shaky, and the security staff immediately recognized Grandpa Arthur. They bowed respectfully and opened the door with deferential gestures. "Sir Hanot, please come in." For the first time, witnessing that scene left me overwhelmed. Grandpa, the man humiliated in the restaurant just yesterday, was now being treated like a king. We entered a private elevator and ascended to the top floor, where the atmosphere grew even quieter, broken only by the soft hum of the lift. Grandpa Arthur led me into a private conference room, a spacious area with a precious wood table, high-end leather chairs, and a view overlooking the entire city sparkling in the afternoon sunlight. His personal lawyer, a middle-aged man in a neat suit named Mr. Harlan, and two financial advisors were already waiting with meticulously prepared documents neatly stacked on the table. They stood to greet him respectfully. "Sir Hanot, everything is ready." Grandpa nodded, took the seat at the head of the table, and gestured for me to sit beside him. The atmosphere in the room was heavy yet professional. I sat there, hands clenched tightly, so nervous I could barely breathe. "What is this, Grandpa? Why are there lawyers?" I thought to myself, eyes glancing at the thick stack of files. Grandpa Arthur spoke clearly, his voice calm but resolute, as if he had been preparing for this moment for a long time. "Gabriel, my old will has existed for many years, dividing the assets in the usual way. But after the recent trip, after what I witnessed, I've decided to officially change the will today. I want you to witness it, because you are the one I trust." His words exploded in my mind like a bomb. Change the will? My heart raced wildly, suspense mixed with fear. Would he cut everyone out completely? And what about me? What would I get? Lawyer Harlan nodded, opened his laptop, and began drafting the new will concisely and clearly, without embellishment, as per Grandpa Arthur's instructions. He read each clause aloud, his voice steady and authoritative, while the two financial advisors took notes and confirmed. First, I was to inherit Grandpa Arthur's personal home after his passing. The old wooden house in the suburbs filled with my childhood memories. "That house is yours, Gabriel. The place where I lived simply, and I want you to preserve it that way," he said, and I nodded, tears nearly spilling. It wasn't just property, it was a symbol of the simplicity he had taught me. Next, I was to receive a fixed annual cash allowance of $1 million for the rest of my life, a staggering amount that left me speechless. "Enough for you to live comfortably but not to become dependent on it," he explained. I sat there, stunned. $1 million a year? My boring life at the insurance office was about to end. But then he continued. "I would not receive the hotels, the company, or any large-scale assets. Those things aren't meant for individuals, grandson. They are to be operated, not divided. All the hotels, resorts, companies, and major real estate would not be distributed to any individual family member, including me. The large assets would remain under the corporate entity and continue operating as before, managed by a professional board." I listened, anxiously thinking, he's protecting the legacy from greed? Then came the most crucial part. Robert, Nancy, Patricia, and Frank would receive no assets or money whatsoever. Their names were omitted from the will. They would have no rights to represent, interfere, or contest anything related to the estate. The reason for their exclusion was explicitly stated: repeated insults, exploitation, and serious violations of moral obligations toward Grandpa Arthur. The lawyer read that clause aloud, and I sensed the coldness in Grandpa's words. Not vengeance, but justice. Olivia, Ethan, and Lucas were also excluded from inheriting any money or assets from Grandpa Arthur. "They chose their path, grandson. I don't want money to ruin anyone else," he said. Grandpa Arthur signed the new will in the presence of the lawyer and me, his pen gliding across the paper with the familiar signature that now carried immense power. The conference room was silent, broken only by the sound of the pen and my pounding heart. I realized in shock, from this moment my life would turn to a new page, one of wealth and freedom, yet also complete opposition to the rest of my family. I looked at him, tears streaming down. "Grandpa, I don't deserve all this. Why did you choose me?" He patted my shoulder. "Gabriel, I chose you not because you're perfect, but because you're the only one who saw me as a person, not a walking wallet. You treated me with genuine kindness, not because you expected anything in return." His words choked me up, and I knew the true legacy wasn't the money, but the lesson he was passing on. We left the conference room, stepped into the elevator, and I felt the world had changed, wealthy yet lonely. Suspense surged. How will the family react when they find out? The story is not over yet. We left the office building under the Alabama afternoon sun, the convoy of sleek black SUVs waiting like loyal guardians. Grandpa sat beside me in the car, looking weary but at peace, as if he had finally shed a burden that had weighed on him for years. I gazed out the window as the city passed by, tall buildings, bustling traffic, but my mind was in turmoil. The will had been signed, $1 million a year, the old house, and nothing more. But that was enough to change everything. I would no longer worry about my boring job at the insurance office or sleepless nights over bills. I could live freely, pursue what I wanted, perhaps travel or learn something new. But in exchange, I had become the enemy of my family. My parents, aunt and uncle, cousins, they would find out soon, and I sensed a storm was coming. My heart beat faster as the car headed toward my apartment in the city center. Grandpa took my hand. "Go home and rest, grandson. I'm going back to the old house. Everything. Just let it unfold." His words were calm, but I heard the warning in them. Suspense surged. I hugged him before parting, feeling as though I was preparing for a battle. Just one day after the will was signed, my parents unexpectedly showed up at my apartment without warning. That morning, I was sitting in my cramped apartment, brewing a cup of bitterly strong black coffee as usual, trying to sort out my thoughts after the crazy days. The doorbell rang loudly, startling me so much that I spilled a few drops of coffee on the table. I looked through the peephole, my dad and mom standing there, faces stern, no smiles. My heart tightened, suspense rising. They're here. Do they know yet? I thought to myself, taking a deep breath before opening the door. "Mom, Dad, why the sudden visit?" "Come in," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, but my hands trembled slightly as I poured water for them. Their attitude was completely different from before, no longer pleading or soft like at Grandpa's house yesterday, but tense, scrutinizing, and suspicious. They sat on my old sofa, eyes scanning the apartment as if appraising it. Messy books, leftover food from last night. My dad cleared his throat, voice cold. "Gabriel, we need to talk about Grandpa." My mom jumped in, voice shrill. "You went with him yesterday, right? To the lawyer's office. We know everything." I sat across from them, heart pounding. How did they know? Who told them? The apartment air suddenly felt stifling, like an interrogation room. I nodded. "Yes, I went with Grandpa to the law office." "What's wrong?" They asked directly about the lawyer meeting and demanded I reveal the entire contents of the new will, their tone pressing. My dad leaned forward. "What did Grandpa do?" "A new will? Tell us everything. Don't hide anything from your parents. We're family." My mom added, "You're the grandson, you must know it all. Don't make us guess." Their eyes probed as if trying to read my thoughts. I clearly sensed the suspicion. They weren't here to check on me, but to extract information. My heart beat faster, anxiously thinking, what should I say? Tell the whole truth or hold back? But I knew hiding was pointless. Grandpa had taught me to live honestly. I explained calmly, voice slow but firm. Yes, he signed a new will. I'm to inherit Grandpa's old house after he passes, and a regular allowance of $1 million a year until I die. But I don't get the hotels, the company, or any large assets. Those continue operating under the corporate entity, not divided among anyone in the family. I paused to gauge their reaction, then continued. As for you, Mom and Dad, Aunt and Uncle, your names aren't in the will. He stated the reason clearly. For the repeated insults, exploitation, and serious moral violations. My words exploded like a bomb in the small living room. The air froze, broken only by the ticking clock from the kitchen. Upon hearing it, my parents' faces changed completely. Initial shock, eyes wide in disbelief, then immediately shifting to anger and humiliation. My dad shot to his feet, the chair scraping hard against the floor. His face turned red, veins bulging on his temples. What? $1 million a year? Just for you? And we get nothing? He pointed straight at my face, voice roaring as if I were a fraud. What did you say to the old man, huh? You manipulated him, didn't you? Exploiting his affection to seize all the assets? You sly fox pretending to be innocent. Before I could catch my breath, my mom jumped in, voice piercing like it was tearing the air. My dear son, you're really something. Playing the saintly good guy all these years just to win over Grandpa, right? She narrowed her eyes, looking at me like a stranger. We raised you, gave you a proper education, and this is how you repay us. By letting him cut us out completely? You ungrateful brat. Their eyes were full of hatred, no trace left of familial love. My heart pounded, a mix of shock and pain overwhelming me. I looked at the two people who had been my parents and felt like I was seeing strangers. Their words cut deep into my heart, cold and sharp as knives. I swallowed hard, trying to stay calm. Mom, Dad, I didn't manipulate anything. Grandpa decided on his own. I just witnessed it. But I knew no matter how much I said, they wouldn't listen. They ignored every explanation. It was as if I was just an excuse for them to vent long built-up rage. My dad slammed his fist on the table, making the coffee cup jump. You'll regret this. We'll sue. We'll overturn all of this, understand? My mom burst into tears, crocodile tears so fake they made me shudder. My son, how could you do this to your parents? Why? Her voice trembled, but her eyes were cold, devoid of any real sorrow. Without letting me say another word, they stood abruptly, hastily grabbing their bags, and stormed out the door as if fleeing. The door slammed shut, echoing through the room. I sat there alone, facing the long, cold cup of coffee. For the first time in my life, I truly felt abandoned. I took a deep breath, stood up, and locked the door, and in that moment, with the click of the lock, I clearly felt an invisible boundary between me and my parents had been permanently severed, irreparable, no going back. I leaned against the door, my body going limp. Tears streamed down, not from loss or regret, but from a painful, suffocating truth. They had never truly loved me. They only loved money, and loved me only when I could still bring them something. A wave of anxiety rose like spreading darkness. What would they do next? Lawsuits? Attacks? Or worse? I didn't know. And that was what made me truly uneasy. Trembling, I called Grandpa and recounted everything through heavy breaths. He was silent for a moment. Then his voice came through, warm but resolute. Be strong, Gabriel. You're not alone. I'm still here. But that night, I couldn't sleep at all. My mind spun with old memories. The times my parents were too busy to pick me up. The long evenings with only Grandpa sitting beside me telling stories. The days he walked me to school, shielding me from the rain with his old umbrella. Now, with everything turned upside down, I saw clearly. The only real family I had ever had in life was him. Just a few days later, the matter spread like wildfire and the wave of hatred began to rise. Family members started posting veiled attacks on social media, Facebook, Instagram, even Twitter, posts full of innuendo that anyone could tell were about me and Grandpa. The first notification came from Olivia. An Instagram story with an image of an old man blindfolded, caption, "When a loved one is manipulated by the greedy, Sad for the family. Ethan posted a meme on Facebook, a vampire sucking blood captioned, "Grandson draining the family dry." Lucas was more subtle, posting a long rant. Mistaken will from a senile old man exploited affection. Where's justice? They mocked Grandpa Arthur as a doddering old fool, manipulated and mentally impaired for writing the wrong will. Some cousins even posted mocking memes about the blood-sucking grandson, the master gold digger, with humorous but vicious images, like a young man holding a bag of money grinning sinisterly beside an old man. I silently watched it spread, sitting at my computer, scrolling through each post, heart pounding with suspense and anger. Those posts got likes and shares from their friends with comments full of agreement. So pitiful for the old man. Greedy people like that deserve punishment. I saw clearly the true level of malice and pettiness in my family, not grieving the loss of Grandpa, but furious over losing money. My dad posted, "Family torn apart by the greed of someone close." My mom cried in a video, "Son betrayed us, Grandpa was duped." Aunt Patricia and Uncle Frank tagged each other in posts, "Inheritance stolen, but justice will prevail." They didn't name me directly, but everyone knew. My friends started asking, and I just stayed silent. Suspense surged. How far will this spread? Will they stop, or actually sue? I called Grandpa, and he advised, "Don't respond to what they say, grandson. Let them reveal their true nature themselves." But every night I lay there staring at the ceiling, overwhelmed by loneliness, wealthy but having lost my entire family. That wave of hatred was like a raging sea, and I knew it hadn't stopped yet. A few months passed, and the storm on social media gradually subsided. But the relationship between me and my family remained completely fractured. The sarcastic posts and venomous memes dwindled, perhaps because they grew tired or because their friends started turning away from such pettiness. I still followed from afar, no likes, no comments, just silently reading and feeling the pain. My job at the insurance office continued, the days clacking away on the keyboard, processing contracts. But now I did it with a different mindset. No longer burdened by financial pressure, but the weight of loneliness was heavier. I spent more time with Grandpa, occasionally visiting him at the old wooden house. Those afternoons sitting beside him brewing hot tea, listening to his old stories, about his youthful days laboring at the factory, about his quiet investment decisions. "Live simply, Gabriel. Money is a tool, not a master," he would often say, his voice hoarse but warm. I nodded, hugging him tighter, and a sense of peace crept in. But deep down, I was anxiously waiting. He was old and frail, time was running out. When will he go? And how will the family react? Those thoughts kept me awake, lying staring at the apartment ceiling, hearing the distant hum of city traffic. One early morning, as the Alabama sun just peeked over the horizon, casting weak rays through the curtains, my phone rang loudly. I was brewing coffee, cup still in hand, and the call was from the hospital. My heart tightened instantly, suspense surging like a wave. "Are you Gabriel Hanot? This is from St. Mary's Hospital. Mr. Arthur Hanot passed away last night due to old age and weakness. We're very sorry." The nurse's voice was calm, but for me the world collapsed. I slumped into a chair, the coffee cup falling and shattering on the floor. The news devastated me. Even though I knew it would happen eventually, I hadn't expected it so soon. He was only 80, and just 3 days ago when I last saw him, he had joked, "I'm still going strong, don't worry about me." Tears streamed down as I sobbed alone in the apartment, remembering him, the man who had changed my life, who had taught me about human nature. "Grandpa, why did you leave so suddenly?" I whispered, hands trembling as I held the phone. Suspense mixed with grief surged. What now? Notify the family, or handle it alone? I took a deep breath, wiped my tears, and decided to send the sad news to the family group chat, the one that had been silent for months, filled only with old sarcastic messages. I typed, "Grandpa passed away last night at the hospital. The funeral will be held tomorrow morning. Whoever can come, please do." I sent it and waited, heart pounding. The responses left me stunned like a punch to the face. No one replied with condolences. Not a single word of sympathy or, "May he rest in peace." Instead, messages flooded in, full of sarcasm and cruelty. Olivia messaged first, "Handle it yourself. You're the one who benefited the most. Now you're rich. Take care of Grandpa's funeral." Ethan chimed in, "The old man dying is just as well. He lived selfishly his whole life, cutting everyone out." Lucas was brief. "Don't expect us to waste time on that funeral. We're busy." And a final message from Robert, my dad. "Bury him yourself. Don't drag us into it. We're done with him." I read and reread them, hands shaking, tears streaming. Stunned, numb. This was family? Grandpa, their own father, their grandfather, reduced to him. Not a shred of humanity left for Arthur. I turned off the phone and sat in silence, loneliness enveloping me like a cold fog. Suspense rose. Have they changed this much? Or were they always like this, only now fully revealed? I sobbed, remembering him. The man who had endured them for years, now passing without a farewell from his children and grandchildren. The funeral took place on a chilly morning, the biting Alabama wind blowing through the cemetery, scattering yellow leaves. I arrived at the funeral home alone, driving in silence, mind chaotic with arrangements. The funeral home was spacious, with polished wooden pews and the faint scent of lilies, but today it felt eerily empty. Only I stood before Grandpa's casket in that vast space. The casket was simple, matching his character, plain oak wood, no extravagance, no wreaths from relatives, no condolences from anyone, no familiar faces except the funeral staff, strangers in black uniforms performing their duties mechanically. I stood there, looking at his portrait, smiling kindly, and tears flowed. "Grandpa, why am I the only one seeing you off like this?" I whispered, hand touching the cold casket. Suspense mixed with grief surged. Would someone from the family show up? Or had they truly abandoned him? I handled everything myself, receiving the body from the hospital, choosing a simple but sturdy casket, arranging the plot in the suburban cemetery, where he had said he wanted to lie beside Grandma. I signed papers, paid all expenses from my own account, not touching the money he left me. Every step felt heavy, as if carrying the injustice Grandpa had suffered from his family. At the hospital, receiving his body, his face peaceful as if sleeping, I sobbed alone in the cold hallway. At the funeral shop, choosing the casket, the staff asked, "Where's the rest of your family?" I just shook my head. "It's just me." Arranging the grave, digging under the chilly sky, wind whistling through old tombstones, signing papers, paying, everything alone, no one to share the burden. In each moment I thought of him. He had lived lonely for years, exploited, humiliated, and now passed in loneliness. My heart ached, suspense building. Would a miracle happen, someone regret and come? The funeral began. The pastor read prayers in silence, broken only by the wind and my sobs. No one came. No parents, no aunt and uncle, no cousins. The vast funeral home felt emptier than ever, a reminder of his isolation. I stood there holding the only bouquet, white lilies I had bought, and placed it on the casket. "Grandpa, even if no one else comes, I'm here with you," I whispered, tears falling freely. In the moment of lowering the casket under a gray sky and biting wind, I stood silently by the grave, shedding tears, not just for losing him, but for the pain of reflecting on his life. Rejected by his own flesh and blood, humiliated in his final days, and finally, passing in solitude without a farewell from them. Images flooded back. Him sitting alone at the resort, money thrown at him in the restaurant, mocked online. "How could they do this to you? You deserved better," I cried, kneeling by the grave, hand touching the damp earth. I whispered by the grave, "You're not alone anymore. I'm here. I promise to live as you taught me, kindly, with heart, even if out there." So many turned their backs. My voice trembled, the wind carrying the words away. I stood up, wiped my tears, and left the cemetery alone, driving home in silence. Suspense rose. What now? Life without him, how will it be? But I knew he had given me strength to live simply, genuinely. That solitary funeral wasn't an end, but a beginning for me to face a new world. 3 weeks after the funeral, when the pain of losing Grandpa still simmered like an unhealed wound, I received an unexpected call from Grandpa Arthur's personal lawyer, Mr. Harlan. That morning I was sitting in my small apartment in Alabama watching the pale golden sunlight filter through the oak leaves outside the window. Everything looked peaceful, but my heart felt heavy. I was forcing myself to start a new day when the phone rang. I answered, and Mr. Harlan's steady voice came through. "Gabriel, it's Harlan. Mr. Arthur left one final part of his plan for you. Can you come to my office today?" This was his direct instruction. I was surprised, my heart pounding. A final plan? I thought it would just be routine legal matters, like finalizing the old will's paperwork or handling bank accounts. "Yes, I'll come right away," I replied, my voice slightly trembling. The entire drive to the office, my mind was in turmoil. For the past 3 weeks, I had been living in isolation. The insurance office job continued, but I performed it mechanically, my thoughts always on him. Afternoons, I visited his grave, sitting and talking to him, but now this call filled me with suspense. What else did he hide? The will was already signed, wasn't it? Those thoughts made me grip the steering wheel tighter, the cool Alabama wind blowing through the car window, carrying the familiar scent of damp earth. I arrived at the office, the sleek black glass building in the city center where I had once witnessed him sign the will. Still grieving, my shoulders heavy with sorrow. Mr. Harlan greeted me at the door, his face serious yet warm. "Come in, Gabriel. Mr. Arthur instructed me to wait until now." We sat in the familiar conference room with its precious wood table and glittering city view. I expected nothing special beyond completing legal procedures. Perhaps paperwork for inheriting the old house or the annual allowance. Mr. Harlan retrieved a thick, sealed envelope from a locked cabinet stamped with Grandpa's signature. "This is a supplemental will, Gabriel. Mr. Arthur instructed that it only be revealed after his passing. He wanted you to be the first to know." Mr. Harlan's words shocked me, making me sit up straight, suspense surging. A supplemental will. What else had he hidden? My hands trembled as Mr. Harlan opened the envelope, the scent of old paper wafting out, and he began to read. The contents left me speechless, as if struck by lightning on a clear day. Mr. Harlan's voice was even, but each word pierced my heart. "The entire hotel chain, resorts, company, and major real estate are transferred to Gabriel Hano. Gabriel becomes the sole heir to the full estate, completely contrary to the previously disclosed will." I sat there, mouth agape, tears streaming without realizing. The entire estate? I thought of the hotel chain across the U.S., the Maldives resort, the massive real estate companies, all now mine? Grandpa Arthur had written clearly in the will in his shaky but resolute handwriting. "This major portion of the estate belongs only to the one person truly deserving of it, the one who never changed, even when receiving nothing. My grandson." His words were like a final blessing, making me sob uncontrollably. Why did he do this? I don't deserve it. I stammered, hand over my mouth. Mr. Harlan paused and looked at me. "Mr. Arthur drafted this will a few months ago while fully competent. It has sufficient witnesses and is legally binding. The previous will was just part of the plan to test everyone." I sat there stunned, suspense surging like a storm. The world spun. From an ordinary office worker, I was now the owner of an empire. But the pain of losing him lingered, and I knew this was his final lesson. Trust in myself, never change for money. Mr. Harlan explained further, "An official announcement will be sent to the press and related corporations today. The news will spread." I nodded, mind reeling. Leaving the office and driving home, I thought of him. He had foreseen everything even after his passing. Suspense mixed with pride. Did he trust me that much? The news spread nationwide within hours. Not just in the media, Major outlets like the New York Times, CNN. But across social media, everyone was shocked that Grandpa Arthur's billion-dollar fortune belonged solely to one grandson. Headlines flooded. Billion-dollar hotel tycoon's legacy goes to sole grandson. Final twist. From office worker to billionaire, a modern Cinderella story. Social media exploded. #Hanat inheritance trending, people commenting fervently. The old man was brilliant, testing the family. The grandson is lucky, but he deserves it. I sat at my computer scrolling, heart pounding. Suspense rose. Will the media hunt me down? And the family? They'll know soon. Just hours after the news broke, my family descended on my small city center apartment. The doorbell rang incessantly, urgently, and before I could compose myself, I heard murmuring in the hallway. When I opened the door, they almost poured in. Dad Robert, Mom, Aunt Patricia, Uncle Frank, then Olivia, Ethan, and Lucas. Gone was any trace of the former hatred and contempt. Instead, pleading faces, feigned remorse, exaggerated sorrow that was blatantly insincere. They crowded into my tiny living room, barely fitting around the old sofa. Faces flushed, eyes glistening with tears I knew were fake. My mom rushed forward, voice sobbing like a seasoned actress. "Gabriel, my son, I'm sorry. We need to talk." My dad jumped in right after, forcing gentleness. "Son, I was wrong. That day I lost my temper. It was all a misunderstanding." They started blaming each other in a clumsy final act performance. Aunt Patricia clutched her chest, sighing. It was Robert's hot temper. We sisters never wanted things to turn out like this. Uncle Frank waved his hands frantically. I was drunk that day. Alcohol made me lose control. No one treats family like that. Olivia sniffled, tears falling perfectly timed. "Gabriel, I regret it so much. I'm truly sorry." Ethan and Lucas stood behind, faces solemn, nodding in sync as if rehearsed. My small apartment suddenly became the worst stage I'd ever witnessed, where those who had abandoned me now tried to don a moral mask they had never truly possessed. Robert even knelt, clutching my legs like a desperate man, voice trembling comically. "Son, your parents are old now. We have nothing left. Just share a small portion with us. Enough to live. I beg you." Nancy collapsed into a chair, hand on her chest, wailing in a way that chilled me. "I was wrong, my son. I regret it so much. I love you. I loved Grandpa. Give me one chance to make amends. Just one." The living room air grew stifling, thick with crying, pleading, dramatic sniffling. But I saw clearly. Every glance, every breath, all of it wasn't sorrow. It was greed. Their eyes gleamed not from regret, but from seeing prey in front of them. I stood tall, calmly looking at each one. In my mind, everything flashed back. Dad's slap in the restaurant, Mom's disdainful gaze, the messages refusing to attend the funeral, the mocking posts ridiculing Grandpa and me, and the image of Grandpa Arthur sitting alone in the resort corner, silently enduring. I took a deep breath and spoke clearly, each word deliberate. "Grandpa gave you chances more than once, but you chose to humiliate him, abandon him, treat him like trash." Then I continued from my own heart. I was there. I witnessed it all. I saw him sitting quietly alone on the trip he paid for everyone. I saw his eyes when you drove him out of the restaurant. I saw the messages you sent when he died, and the shameful silence at his funeral. I stepped forward, voice firm. "Don't ask why he left you nothing. You chose that yourselves." A heavy silence enveloped the room. I could hear my own heartbeat and the last flicker of hope dying in their eyes. My voice was resolute, each word weighted as if Grandpa stood behind me supporting. He saw everything, and so did I. I won't share a single penny. I won't forgive, and I won't resume any family relationship. Their faces went ashen. The crying stopped abruptly, replaced by silent panic. I stepped back, pointing to the door. "Please leave, and never come back." They stood awkwardly, shuffling out. No one dared look at me, no one dared say my name. The door opened, then closed. once more. And this time, I knew they had left my life just as they had abandoned Grandpa while he was still alive. I stood in the empty living room hearing the silence envelop me, but this time the silence was no longer frightening. A few months later, I moved into the house Grandpa Arthur left me, the old wooden home in the suburbs full of memories. I took over the company, working with the professional management team, meetings, investment decisions, but I didn't let power change me. I didn't spend lavishly. I used part of the profits to establish a foundation in Grandpa Arthur's name to support elderly people abandoned by their families, funding nursing homes, medical care, and psychological counseling. Despite owning immense wealth, I lived simply, keeping my promise to him that money would never change me. Still black coffee every morning, still driving the old car, still reading on the porch. One afternoon, standing before his grave under pale golden sunlight, wind scattering leaves, I whispered, "You gave me something greater than wealth, the lesson about human nature." Tears streamed down, but I smiled. The lesson was the most precious legacy. The message, the lesson, the advice I drew from my own life story. Wealth doesn't change people. It only reveals who they truly are, like my family, whose greed surfaced when money appeared. Family isn't blood. Family is those who choose to stand by you, like he chose me and I chose him. Money can buy many things, but it can't buy back lost respect. They lost it all, and there's no way to regain it. I walked out of the cemetery at peace, heading toward a new life, carrying the greatest spiritual legacy Grandpa Arthur left: dignity, compassion, and the strength to live true to oneself. I drove home, wind blowing through, and for the first time I felt truly free.